Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Today we're doing the beginner's guide for the final Radiance starter deck that came out a few weeks ago. So basically in this video, we're going to crack open two of these things and build the best possible deck with only the contents of two final Radiance starter decks. Now, as I do in most of these videos, at the end I'll go over cards, both budget and non-budget, that will overall increase the power of the deck. But basically this video is for new players or even players who just want to try out the final Radiance theme. And this video will just help you build a deck that is, decent enough to play at your locals. Again, with the idea of possibly improving it in the future towards the end of the video. So that being said, let's get started. Alright guys, so I've already cracked open these two starter decks, and we'll start with our leader, which always starts in play. So on the unawakened side, or the side you'll start the game on, this is going to be a very beginner friendly video, by the way, so I'll be doing a lot of explanations. You're going to start with Goku and Vegeta. Now, one thing I'm going to preface this with is that in the Dragon Ball Super card game Masters, when you see a lot of Gokus and Vegetas and Vegetos in the color black, normally down here where you see the names Goku and Vegeta, you're going to see a lot of Goku and Vegeta Xenos. That's from Dragon Ball Heroes, if you guys are not familiar with that. But this is actually regular Goku and Vegeta, and that distinction is going to be very important throughout this video, this deck, and the upgrades that we'll talk about later. So know that this is a regular Goku and Vegeta, and the backside of this is a regular Vegeto, and then I'll point out later when we see actual Xenos. Again, very important. But with Activate Main, once per turn, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, add any black sand that costs 6 or less. This being an Activate Main is very, very powerful because it allows us to generate card advantage turn 1, even if we go first, which a lot of other leaders cannot do. So I'll point out things throughout this video and throughout this deck that kind of give it edges over other things, right? So our Awaken, we're able to flip our leader over when we meet the correct criteria with the My Future from the Z deck in play. And then we have SSB Vegito Shining Warrior. This leader honestly does quite a lot, gives you the opportunity to draw 2 cards per turn, assuming you set up your Z extra card, which is nice. And you're able to buff Vegetos, including himself, by 5k to make those attacks a little bit beefier. Pretty simple leader, but honestly pretty good. So we're going to move this guy down here just because this is the leader of our deck. And then we'll go into some of our other cards. So we're going to start with our Z deck. Our Z deck here is pretty simple just because we're playing the cards that they've included for us. So we have 3 copies of Mai. Honestly, in a competitive version, you wouldn't really need 3 copies, but we have 7 slots in our Z deck. We're going to just use them up. There's no reason not to. 3 Mai just helps us find our Vegetos that we want to be fusing into. This is going to be a Union Potara based deck. I'll explain what Union Potara does when we actually get some of the Vegeto cards. But yeah, Mai, super solid for that. And now she has an ability which is called Z-Stack. Z-Stack 1 Black Trunks Future. Underneath this card when it's played. So when you play Mai, you get to immediately go into your Z deck and then put this Future Trunks guide from the future underneath the Mai. The Trunks has its own ability to play itself from under the Mai for 1 energy, and it helps you get Gokus and Vegetas out to the board, which is very, very important in a Union Potara or any fusion based strategy. And just to finish off the Z deck for our last couple cards here, we are going to play 2 copies of the final Kamehameha. You need this in play for your leader to start generating the draws once you start fusing, so that's pretty important just for that. But the reason we have 2 is because you might actually use the Activate Battle once or twice in a game, and honestly, I'd probably cut the 3rd Mai and play a 3rd final Kamehameha if 3 actually came with the starter deck, but that's not the case, so we're just playing the 2 that we have here. But that's a fine 7-card Z deck just to get you started, and we'll talk about some upgrades to the Z deck at the end of the video. But now for our main deck. So we're playing a 50-card main deck in Dragon Ball Super. You can play anywhere from 50 to 60 cards in your main deck. We're just keeping it consistent here with 50 cards. So we're going to play 4 copies of Goku Help Has Arrived, and 4 copies of Vegeta Help Has Arrived. So I'm just going to move these into actual frame here. So with these cards, they basically fetch each other, which again, very important for a fusion-based strategy. You can also attack with them, and they boost themselves up to 10k power, so they are going to be threatening unawakened leaders. You can even combo onto them for them to threaten awakened leaders if you really need the Z energy, and that's assuming you guys know how to actually play the game. You should know how to play the game before watching this video. But yeah, we definitely want 8 copies of our Gokus and Vegetas that do fetch each other from the deck. Again, important distinction, these are regular Gokus and Vegetas, not Xenos. Very, very important. Put these over here now. So next up, we have some interesting off-color cards. We have 4 copies of Vegito Polymorphic Potara. So what this card does is you basically activate it for 1, you discard the card from your hand, and then you get to go look through your deck and your drop area and play 1 Goku, again, non-Xeno, and 1 Vegeta, non-Xeno. Play them to the board, but then you're locked into only playing Vegito cards for the rest of that turn. So I don't think I'd play this card in the competitive version of the deck because getting locked into that is not so great in a more competitive build. But even in this build, I would probably only try to use this like much earlier in the game, because later on when you have more energy, you're going to want to make other plays, play non-Vegito cards, for instance, and this is going to lock you into that. So this would be like a really good turn 2, or maybe even turn 1, where you can play your Goku and Vegeta, and then you can go ahead and fuse from there. That could definitely work out. Now, let's go ahead and explain Union Potara. So, we have 4 copies of SSB Vegito Beyond Shining, which is a new card that came out with the starter deck that, of course, you're going to want to play 4 copies of. We also have 4 copies of an old but very, very cool card, and that is Vegito Powers Combined. So, the nice thing about this deck being full of Gokus and Vegetas that aren't Xeno is that you can play some of these older Vegito support cards, and they'll still actually work for the deck, right? So I guess first and foremost, let's talk about what Union Potara even is. So Union Potara is a method of fusion, and if you guys are familiar with Dragon Ball as a series, you know there's a couple different types of fusion, but Union Potara specifically requires you to have one of each character in the battle area. And once you have them, they can be any cost, any color besides, you know, if they're specified here. Like here, for example, the Goku and Vegeta both have to be black in order to play Beyond Shining. But basically, you'll take a Goku, you'll take a Vegeta, put them on top of each other when they're already in the battle area, and then you'll pay the cost to play your fusion. So the great thing about a card like Beyond Shining is that it's actually going to cost you 0 energy in order for you to fuse into this card, which is really, really strong. He also combos with our leader very, very nicely because he has an ability that's going to allow him to attack 2 times. Our leader will buff a Vegito by 5k for the entire turn, so that means on both attacks, he's going to be 25k, and he also has an ability that lets you combo a Goku or Vegeta from underneath himself when attacking or defending. So this guy can attack for 30k 2 times, which is definitely very, very powerful. Now, the cool card that we might even still include in a competitive version is Vegito Powers Combined. Much older card from set 6, but what's cool about this is it fuses for 1 energy of any color over any color Goku and Vegeta, and when you play it, you draw 1, and if you played it by union, you draw another 1, and then your leader says if you have the final Kamehameha in play, and you play a card using union, you draw another card. So, you know, for however much energy it takes you to put Goku and Vegeta in play, which typically would just be 1 energy, and for the extra energy to actually play this card, you're making a 20k attacker, and you're drawing 3 cards. That's honestly pretty solid. So, good card for the deck. This is the main, like, beef and the main power of our deck here. Now let's go on to some other stuff. So we have 4 copies of Vegeta, the Prince Strikes Back. So first and foremost, this is a Vegeta Xeno. So this is the first kind of distinction where I was talking about there being different types of Gokus and Vegetas. This will not be eligible for fusion fodder into our regular Vegetos. Just keep that in mind. But this is what we call a super combo. There's a super combo keyword there. And these are cards you can only play 4 of in your deck. You can only have 4 total super combos throughout your entire deck because they're just that strong. In Dragon Ball Super, the combo mechanic is just such an important part of the game, and these cards are the best cards in the game to combo with. So that's why they had to kind of put that limitation there for only having 4 super combos in your deck. You'll always play 4 super combos in any deck you build. That's just something to note. Next up, we have another Goku Xeno, which honestly, the fact their Xenos aren't too important for this build in terms of, like, you know, you can't fuse with them here, but they are actually important as Xenos for some of the post-deck upgrades we'll talk about. But very simple, just play it, draw a card, good card to start on your turn 1 with. Now we have 2 more Goku and Vegeta Xenos. So first we have Goku True Fighting Spirit, which is a very powerful card. It actually had to be errated to kind of nerf it down a little bit. And we also have 3 copies of Vegeta True Fighting Spirit, which is Not as good, but it's still good in some matchups. So basically, these cards punish your opponent in some form or fashion. True Fighting Spirit Goku, while it's on the board, if your opponent activates a counter, they're going to go ahead and warp one card from their hand. So that's really good there. The Vegeta True Fighting Spirit's definitely a bit more niche, but there are some powerful leaders like Golden Frieza or Soul Striker Goku that untap energy, and whenever your opponent untaps an energy without using an Awaken skill, they're going to have to go ahead and warp one card from their hand. So very good against blue, good against one yellow deck in particular. But yeah, these are more Goku and Vegeta Xenos. And if you really look closely, you can pretty much tell by their outfit, but you can always see it in the bottom left corner of the card there, which type of Goku or Vegeta it is. Next up, just to round out some defenses, we have Supreme Kai of Time, Final Battle at Hand. When you play it, you draw a card, and if you have 4 or less life, it's a blocker, so it can definitely eat up a big attack if your opponent's not going to be able to remove it first. Then we have 2 copies of Power Burst. Now we're getting into some more extra cards, and Power Burst is okay. I probably wouldn't play it in a competitive version of the deck, but it is going to allow you to negate an attack and then pick up any 1-drop black battle card from your drop area or your warp, and we just went over a ton of 1 cost. So whatever 1 cost you need for the situation, Power Burst is going to allow you to pick up. Then we have 3 copies of Supreme Kai of Time, Labyrinth Unleashed. This is a super good card. This is a reprint. It was actually originally a super rare, which is a more high rarity card in most main sets. But good reprint here. This is going to allow you to negate an attack and then warp a card on your opponent's side of the field. It'll come back at the end of the turn or the start of their next turn, one or the other. But basically, you're going to remove it as a threat for the turn that you counterattack with this. So this is what we might call a 2-for-1 attack stopper. If your opponent attacks with their leader, you counter the attack, warp one of their battle cards. Now you just stop 2 attacks for 1 card and 1 energy. That is very, very good. Speaking of 2-for-1s, we have 4 copies of Support of the Dark Empire. Very, very competitive card. A lot of competitive decks do actually play anywhere from 2 to 4 copies of what we call these blocker token negates. So when you're at 5 or less life, you're going to use this card for 0 energy. Very standard. You're not going to pay 2 energy for this. But when you're at 5 or less life, you can activate this card for free by taking a life, and you'll negate that attack, and you'll generate a blocker token. So again, same vein with Supreme Kai of Time, stopping potentially 2 attacks for 1 card. Very, very good. And then finally, we just have 3 copies of Mira Dimensional Superpower. Some competitive builds might play this card because it can be useful to get things into your warp. It's also nice here because certain counterattacks your opponent might use might limit you from attacking with battle cards X amount of times in that turn. And this being a unison, it's not subject to those types of what we call floodgates. So it gives you an extra attacker. The +1 gives you more cycle through your deck. And the -2 can be a very powerful game-ending attack. So pretty good there. That's the 50 cards we have from just this set of starter decks. Now let's go ahead and talk about some cards you can add to the deck to make it a bit more powerful. All right, now let's talk about some cards you could add to your deck if you want to go outside just the contents of these starter decks and buff up your build a little bit. So firstly, let's talk about secret rares. What even is a secret rare? It's a very important thing in the Dragon Ball Super card game. There are these cards you can only play one of in your deck because of the ultimate keyword tag that just have very powerful game impacting effects. So a lot of meta SCRs are going to be very, very expensive. However, for all beginners, I'm always going to recommend Heroine's Lineage, which is going to run you less than $20, so you should have to go ahead and pick one up. It's playable in any deck, and it has a really strong surprise factor. If your opponent's not expecting it, which they probably won't because this card is not very meta, it can definitely steal and win you games. And then if you decide you want to really get invested in Dragon Ball Super Card Game Masters and you want to go ahead and pick up some more expensive SCRs, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But for now, Heroine's Lineage is going to be great. You're going to get good mileage out of it because you can play it in literally any deck. Now let's go ahead and talk about the Z deck. The number 1 and really only thing at the moment you need to add to your Z deck is going to be Majin Buu Pure Destroyer. This is probably the best Z deck card in black generically. It's a 1 cost, it's a blocker, and for 1 more Z energy, it's going to allow you to remove one of your opponent's battle cards and become a 25k either attacker or blocker, whichever you choose to do with it. This card's very powerful, runs you about $5, but definitely worth the pickup. And honestly, if you can, pick up multiples, and you can start to chop down on some of those unnecessary Mai's in the Z deck. Then we have in the actual main set 22 Critical Blow, a couple of Vegetos that are meant to be played in this deck. So they kind of want you to go out and get cards from the main set. These are commons though. If you go to a local card shop where people play Dragon Ball Super, I honestly expect them to just give you these cards, but you know, play set of each of these should not run you more than $1. So I definitely go ahead and get 4 of each of these and just kind of figure out where to put them in your deck, because they are meant to be played with the strategy. And I'd probably honestly cut the red polymorphic Potara Vegeto in favor of these cards. And then finally, for a defensive buff, we have Petrification, which is probably honestly the best black counterattack in the game. It's just so good because it shuts down so many powerful effects via its ability to stop autos from activating. So very, very good card. This is a little bit more expensive for a common. It's going to run you about $2 a piece because it is a bit of an older card, hasn't really been reprinted, but still definitely worth it if you want to add a little bit of boost of power to your deck for only, you know, a small cost. But anyways, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's video. If you have any questions or comments or concerns or other recommendations for cards to add to this deck to make it a little stronger, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.